Welcome to Wavelength's webinar on addressing the impact of COVID-19 on remote advancement teams. What we will be covering today is, we're breaking it up into two sections actually. We're going to start by focusing on how can you lead a team remotely, and then we're going to follow that with operating a remote advancement team. We know that we have a wide range of school structures joining us today. You might be a team of one, a team of 5 or more. Regardless, we hope that the tools and resources we're providing today will be relevant to you. We have Boost My School joining today to help share some of the resources that they've also been able to gather as we face COVID-19 together. If you have questions at any point, you can toggle your mouse and you should see a navigation panel. There's a Q&A button. As you can see on the agenda, we do have 2 times to have Q&A, but if you have any questions throughout, feel free to post and we will get to it as soon as possible. To start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Katie Gibson. I am the Senior Director of Partnerships at Wavelength. Wavelength is focused on simplifying alumni relations with better data, a more engaged constituent base, and easier volunteer management. As I mentioned, we do have Boost My School with us today. Holman, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Yep, yeah, thanks, Katie. Again, my name is Holman Gao. I'm the founder and CEO of Boost My School. We've built a fundraising and engagement platform for K-12 schools and also colleges. And we work with schools from online fundraising with giving days and also event registration with reunions.
Excellent. Thank you, Holman. As we get started, I want to make sure that we address the fact that this has happened all very quickly. So we know that these changes are happening at a quick pace. There's a lot unknown, and everyone's having to take this day by day. So when you're thinking about leading a remote team, there are a few things that you have to keep in mind. One is that your teammates are working from home, and everyone has various family structures. You might have people with spouses in the healthcare industry. Other people might have significant others worried about having a job tomorrow. So as a result, keeping in mind that working schedules might need to be flexible as children are at home, it's really important. So one thing that I recommend is scheduling meetings well in advance. That allows people to be as prepared as possible, try and have the coverage they need in terms of children's support and more. What you also want to keep in mind is that team goals might have to shift. You might not have control of your budget. School priorities are obviously changing as remote learning is prioritized. So as you are working through that, the biggest thing is communication and prioritizing what you can do and what you have control of. So being task-oriented, thinking about next steps, and really making sure that your team feels accomplished will be important. But to do that, it might be valuable to allow some more brainstorming of new ideas. This is a completely new space, a completely new environment, and while a lot of what you've been doing in the past can be successful today, it might be valuable to continue to think in new ways, or think of all of those back burner items of if only we had more time, and see if that's possible to address today. As I've mentioned before, there's a lot unknown. So the importance of when you're working remotely is to check in regularly with your team. That might differ depending on your teammate. They have different preferences on how you want to communicate. It might be by different channels. But I encourage you in one-on-one meetings to discuss how you will work with each of your teammates. This will allow them to be open and honest about their needs, about their home structure, and right now the priority is trust and community aspect. Another thing to consider is what technology tools you can use to support a remote team. When you're doing this, your school might already have some prioritized platforms. So I would work with them directly, but you might also have the ability to find platforms yourself. Regardless, after you've selected the platform, having a planning session or a meeting to train your team on the virtual tools is important. Think about this as almost like a new hire coming in. As you are onboarding someone, you're telling them how to use a platform, what you expect them to use each platform for, and the frequency of updating and all of that. It's very similar when you're moving to a remote team. You have to think through what are you expecting on each channel, how are you hoping people will communicate, and restarting and resetting expectations will be valuable and important. Any form of large work adjustment also requires change management. The link here, which we will share out in the future after this call, has a bunch of different change management models to it. I will say that most of these change management models are planned so that you have a long time between when you know change is going to happen and when it's actually implemented. But I still think that this is relevant to today's standards because there's a lot of change management that still could be used as you've been moved remotely. That includes setting expectations with your team on how you communicate, how you're going to run projects in the future, what ownership looks like, and how you keep morale up. As I've mentioned before, communication is key, but you communicate differently online than in person. If you reflect on how you work in your day-to-day in the office, you might swing by a person's office, or you might catch someone over lunch or grabbing a coffee. That water cooler chat is really important. You are connecting with them personally, you're hearing about them as an individual, and you're able to talk shop. So making sure that you're able to maintain some of those similar behaviors online will be really important to continue that team morale and team camaraderie. As you think about team meetings, think about how you've run them in the past. How you run them in person should be very similar to how you run them over the phone. Video calls are really powerful because it connects people through faces and you can see emotions as well. Send the agenda and documents ahead of time so everyone's prepared. And as I mentioned previously, trying to maintain the schedule well in advance so people can have child support or prepare for it is really valuable. Ongoing check-ins throughout the week is also important. That channel of communication will differ by team member, but as you check in, make sure that you are checking in beyond just work. These are people who are also struggling through having to manage what today's news is saying to them, thinking about way beyond just their day-to-day job. As I mentioned before with encouraging team bonding, sharing virtual activities will promote unity. So if you've had happy hours in the past, promoting a remote happy hour or trying to do lunch meetings or lunch gatherings, that's still doable with technology today and will encourage the ongoing team camaraderie in the future. An idea for team meetings is actually to invite some other department leads in to share updates and ideas. This will make your team feel more connected with your school and will continue to promote team-wide connections so that you can start doing joint projects as you would in person. Setting expectations on how you communicate by channel is important because people operate in different ways. I know here at Wavelength that one of my teammates likes to check emails only in the afternoon so that they can focus on coding in the morning without distractions. If you set expectations of what channel is the most important versus ones that might be able to be checked in on at various times throughout the day, it will help to make sure that your team is all on the same page with important updates as well as updates that can be learned about at a later date. Another idea is scheduling coffee chats between team members. What I like to do, especially as I know various teammates are working on different projects, if there are pain points or ideas that might be similar across various projects, is connecting the dots for them. Encouraging two people to meet up and discuss a certain topic will bring in broader conversations and ideas and brainstorming that could hopefully move projects forward. As I mentioned with water cooler chats, it's important to continue to get a read on how everyone's doing. Each of the platforms that you use for online meetings have various levels of interactive ability. In this scenario, this is Zoom. Zoom meetings allows participants to be able to write, draw, tag their name on your screen, so it's interactive. On the left-hand side, you can see just a quick question on how are people doing today and what is going to bring them joy. And on the right-hand side, it's what's your current mood. I feel like in this day and age, there's a lot of communication, there are a lot of words being used. People might be better able to express themselves by tagging their name next to a picture. Bottom line, this allows people to level set with each other, bringing the outside world into the meeting a little bit so people understand where is everyone coming from before starting your meeting and your official agenda. As far as task management goes, it's important to over-communicate. When you're in person, you're able to double check by doing a quick flyby someone's desk. Over the phone, you want to double check and make sure that everything is owned in a project. So to make projects easy and accessible, this means that you want to have all of the tasks thought of and assigned to people, set clear due dates, check-in calls, and roles. Allow for flexibility so that if someone has to take a few different hours off during the day but can work in the evenings or early morning, if they have due dates in mind, this allows them to work on their own schedule from home to fit their personal needs. What is helpful is to find a tracking tool to monitor this progress and keep track as an entire team of where everyone stands. Wavelength actually offers that ability. We have a task management tool where as administrators, you're able to assign yourself or your teammates tasks with due dates and descriptions. And as a teammate, I would know what is on my to-do list and be able to mark them as complete. We've just covered very high level some concepts on how to work remotely. If you have any questions, again, you can toggle the screen to the Q&A section and post. We'll just give you a minute to ask any questions you might have. We just had a question come in about how do you have supportive conversations in times of uncertainty? Bottom line, the key is to be honest and open and supportive. You do not have all the answers, and that's okay. You shouldn't have them, but maintaining open lines of communication and allowing your teammates to be able to share their concerns with you makes you have a far better handle of how you can support them and how you can expect them to perform in their role. Another question coming in is about time management. What I encourage with time management, again, it's definitely a personal preference. I always encourage my team remotely to work at their speed, and as long as they have the tasks and projects that they know they need to deliver on at a specific time, then and they complete it in that time frame, then that's all that I can ask for. I encourage regular check-ins as well. Yes, I do have a link for this recording of the webinar. We will be sharing it out after this call, along with the slides and any resources we reference. Excellent. In the essence of time, I'm going to move on. But just as a practice exercise that I do sometimes with remote meetings is just taking a quick minute break, stand up, stretch. We're all sitting in probably different office chairs than we're used to. Write down that list that's compiling in your brain of everything you need to do to get it out and know you can address it later. Or think about the day's schedule ahead. We're just going to take a quick break, take a quick breath. And in this next section, we're going to focus on how to work as an advancement team remotely. Excellent. Take a few more seconds. If you haven't already, maybe stand up from your chair, move around your legs a little bit, write down that list, and we'll get right back to it. Holman and Boost My School is going to be leading this, the start of this next section, so I will let him take the lead.
Great, thanks, Katie, and thanks for that break. I mean, I'm in a really small New York apartment, so it's always a good reminder just to stretch and stretch my legs. So just wanted to quickly go into some of the findings that we've found about how advancement teams are feeling over the last few weeks. And then also from the agenda of the before, we're going to go into communication strategies. Yep. And specifically highlighting one giving day that happened last Tuesday, which was actually successful. I think it's been a rarity in the last few weeks. So really honing on the learnings from that. And then Katie will finish this section off talking about how to develop an online community. Great, so some context about how we polled schools. So again, I'm the founder and CEO of Boost My School. We work with schools on their giving days. You can see a screenshot of one of the giving days that we helped run, well, that we were going to help run. And on the week of March 16th, just to rewind again, that was the week after Tom Hanks got COVID, the NBA shut down. So I think it really became very pressing nationally. We just got a lot of emails from customers saying, like, hey, what are other schools doing about their upcoming giving days? Like, there's definitely a heightened sense of anxiety. And from there, we were like, okay, like let's not only ask our customers, but let's just get a general sense of what's going on and how schools are feeling about it. So moving on to the next slide, we're going to go into some results, but just to share like where the results are coming from. We polled both K-12, upper and lower schools, and colleges, over 100 respondents, and these are speaking about events happening from 2 weeks ago, which was March 16th, to the end of the year. And you can see a variety of either giving days or events like reunions and just general annual fund appeals. And the main consensus that came from this survey, moving on to the next slide, was, and I guess this is the big question that everyone's feeling, is like what to do about these giving days. And I think the main consensus is that, well, from a strategy perspective on the advancement side, like these days were needed to hit annual fund goals. I think that's clear. Like the schools are still operating, the fundraising still has to happen. But on the other hand, of course, it's a very, very sensitive time. Like it's not just the financial crisis, but it's also people are dying. So this is an unprecedented time in terms of those two aspects. So how can those two exist in conjunction, or is it even possible? And just one quick note here is that the canceling, most of the people that were canceling, it was because they were already running another thing in May or June, so they didn't want to just postpone something that was happening now until May or June and have them overlap. So generally the consensus is fundraising needs to happen, but how does it happen? So moving on to the next slide, one interesting thing was that even for us as a company, and we worked with schools coast to coast, all of our giving days that we were working with from 2 weeks ago, even until mid-April, they were all postponed or canceled. So just know that that is right now definitely the more common action in this period. So what I needed to do was, well, I didn't want to just position ourselves and say like, hey, this is what you should do, when really we didn't do a deep dive yet into what has worked. So I went on Twitter, the best of the search engines, and I just searched like Giving Day, K to 12, because we did see a lot of school emergency funds, but I just wanted to see like, was there anything annual fund specific? And I filtered it by after March 20th, and there were only like 3 or 4 tweets that came up about Day of Givings. And I found this one by MCI, Maine Central Institute. Whoops, sorry, Alicia, this should be M-A-I-N-E, Maine, the state. But I got on the phone with Alicia Nichols. She's the Dean of Advancement at MCI, and she was gracious enough for us to present some of the learnings that they had and their stories. So thank you, Alicia. I know she may or may not be on this call, but thank you. So going into what you can see already some of the results on the page. For one, again, this happened last Tuesday, so this is right in the midst of the COVID outbreak. And they actually increased how much they raised from last year, which I thought was very remarkable. And I think the most remarkable thing, and probably the thing that all of us are shooting for, is they got no complaints from constituents in any of the channels that they used. So I think that's something that is powerful, and we're going to go into how they think that they were able to get to that result. So just to step back a little bit and understand like the context that they were working with, I think this story is going to be very similar to what a lot of y'all are going through. So they planned their Giving Day a year in advance. And just 2 weeks before the event, that's when the COVID stuff started happening. So they suspended all Giving Day outreach. That means no mailers, no emails, and no social media. So at that point, they had a $50K matching gift committed from various donors. And I think this is something that is very actionable that we recommend to everyone. It's just to call the major donors, lead the call with just, hey, we're just a general check-in, just because that is important in this time right now, getting a sense of how they're feeling. Most importantly, is their family okay? Are they healthy? Are they safe? But over the course of that check-in call, they were able to see that the matching gift was still on. The major donors were still okay with that happening. And I think that kind of gave the team, it's like, okay, like maybe this can still continue. But of course, the big challenge, I think that what we're all struggling with now is, what should the messaging be? So the MCI communications team had a strategy all planned out, but it just wasn't fitting the messaging of now. And so what they did a few days before, remember, this is actually just like right before the Giving Day, like a few days before, Maine issued a stay-at-home notice, so all the schools started closing. And 2 days before that, their faculty had to get together and learn how to teach all of the curriculum online, which is incredible. Like, teachers are awesome. And so at that time, the advancement team, they're like, okay, well, this is remarkable. Let's lean in on that. That's a powerful story, and we can rally as a community to salute the faculty for making that commitment. And even a side note, they were like, well, if our faculty can do this in 2 days, can teach online in 2 days, let's get together on the advancement side and let's find the right messaging in 2 days. So that's what they rallied around. And then in terms of the matching gift, switching from a donor goal to a dollar for dollar match. I think the two big things there was that initially there was going to be in-person solicitations. Like, that clearly was not going to happen. So that would affect the donor count. And on the other side, by having a participation goal, you are almost pressuring people to give something. And at this point, it's better to do the opposite. Let people participate without having to make a gift. So moving on to the next slide. So here's a link, which is still live on their page if you want to go to MCI's page. I just wanted to share a few notes of their messaging. again, this presentation will be shared afterwards, so you can always go to the link after. But you can see how like some of this quote, some of the text is related around saluting the resilient faculty, the matching gift, give what you can. And I think as well, importantly, acknowledging like, hey, first and foremost, we hope that you and your loved ones are healthy and safe. Moving on to the next slide. I think this is a big question for all of you. Like, how does the outreach actually happen, even with the messaging found? And this is where, you know, talking with Alicia, I was definitely surprised to learn some of this stuff. I mean, as a Giving Day platform, we usually recommend, you know, like a lot email blasts up until the Giving Day, just to get people familiar with the messaging. But of course, this is not the time for that. And that's what MCI was thinking as well, opting for more personal outreach, but still doing a little bit of the mass outreach. So you can see that they did just one email blast the day before, in conjunction with just one Facebook post the day before, with the messaging that we just mentioned. You can see the post on the left. And what's really remarkable was that this was actually one of the most shared Facebook posts in school history. And I think that really highlighted that they found the right messaging in this time. And then throughout the day, the team did text messages and phone calls. Like even on these phone calls, you can still, you know, touch base, like how are things going, like not just in a solicitation sense. And then probably the most important thing is that allowing everyone the out. So like making sure like people know, hey, you don't have to give, not everyone can give, it's okay. So they just made sure to include that and be sensitive in this time. So that was a story about, again, like a school that ran the Giving Day last week and had no complaints, and we're still able to even raise more than they did last year. So stepping back from that and trying to help out, apply that story to all of you all, I think the biggest key, other than the outreach piece and that cadence, is finding a message that resonates, and that's doing something that's very relevant now. We've seen on the restricted side, seeing colleges mostly going into the student emergency funds or any kind of funds for constituents that are really struggling right now. But on the annual fund side, similar to MCI, there may be an opportunity to lean into something that's really immediate. So whether that's e-learning, which is every school has adopted that right now, or technology required to operate remotely, or the power of the teachers to adapt. Like there's a lot of amazing things happening at the operational level right now for schools, and the annual fund is that glue that supports it. And you can see some quotes on the right from our survey of schools that are trying to figure out the right message. And then to end this section, we're gonna just leave with some kind of main takeaways, other than finding the message. Alicia, when we're talking about it, like, you know, she said multiple times, so much of it is being respectful. Like, I think that is key. This is a crazy time, so, you know, this is the time to be overly cautious. But one thing that, you know, she mentioned to me a lot was trusting your gut and trusting your experience. Like when we were talking about what they were thinking, you know, they said that they went to a bunch of webinars, you know, they talked to consultants, and people were giving varying advice. Some people said, like, this is not the time to fundraise. Some other people were saying, like, you know, you have a school mission that hasn't changed, like, fundraise now. And I think regardless of what everyone else says, I think the key that I take away from MCI's story is that, you know your constituents better than anyone else. You know, what I love about this industry is that all the advancement professionals have very high EQ. There's a lot of empathy. Like, even when we talk to our customers, I'm always amazed by that. And you have so much experience with talking to your donors. Like, just reach out and say hello. Talk about what the school's doing. Like, there might be something in there, like a nugget that does resonate, and then lean in on it. I know Alicia's team, like she mentioned, you know, they were nervous. You know, they did well at the end, but like definitely the days before like all of us, they were anxious, they were nervous, but they really trusted the message that they came up with and what they thought of their donors, and they leaned in on it. They trusted in their team, and ended up working out. So I just wanted to share that story as a message of hope that it is possible. You know, it's going to be really hard. We're in unprecedented times, but it is possible to find that right message.
Thank you so much, Holman. We had a few questions coming in that I think you answered. One was about whether or not they should postpone a giving day, and per what you just presented, it seems like it's very dependent on the school, but have faith in your constituents, and it might be valuable to speak with some of your key strong constituents just to get a read from them. Does that sound about right?
Yep, yeah, and I think that, yeah, the key is maybe not necessarily ask them whether you should host the Giving Day, but at least get a sense of like a pulse of what's top of mind, and like would anything that the school's doing resonate in this time? Because, you know, it may not, and in that case, like, trust your gut again and postpone.
Excellent, thank you. We'll have some more time for questions later as well, but as Holman was talking about kind of leaning into your constituents and really talking with them and hearing from them, it's really valuable and important to think of developing a community online and how that can look. Your alumni are a powerful tool of very engaged individuals in whatever communities they're a part of, both in your school and out. And they have various skill sets that they can contribute. Princeton Day School, one of our clients, has launched a Panther Alum Live event. So they basically promote the skills and talents of alumni by sharing them through live Facebook events. They recently had a Nashville musician do a little live show from her living room. So I think that really goes to show how you can get some community activity just on an ongoing basis. As everyone's at home, they're seeking various forms of entertainment, and there's a value to a shared community and shared connection like an alum. Another another school that we work with like to find alumni to support teachers in their lesson planning and participating in live conversations. This is more and more doable with the platforms that exist like Zoom, where you can actually look for alumni that are in various career fields and ask them to support and answer questions to students. The school that I have in mind has a STEM class where they were learning all about computers and coding and security. And one of the alum of the school was actually the head of an IT tech firm, and he came in just to talk to them about security, and it was a Zoom meeting, which again is more in line with this remote learning. One of our groups at a college decided to look at their local alumni lists by geography, and they have created some email lists so that younger alumni can support the older generations if they are unwilling or unable to leave their home and run errands, supply food, all of that. So you can really develop some great community initiatives by just engaging and mobilizing your alumni group. And you don't have to be the only ones coming up with these ideas. If you have class officers or volunteers, you can also get them in on a call and really hear from them what their interests are, what's the read that they have on their community, and what is feasible. You obviously want to communicate with your constituent base, but you don't want to overwhelm them with too much or underwhelm them with not enough information. As you think about developing this online community, it's not just alumni that can be supported. If you think about faculty and staff today, there's probably career advancement days, college visiting, and just there's a way that you can loop alumni in. They have such various backgrounds. The data that you do have on hand can be used to support in replacing what in-person days could look like. So for a career day, maybe you start having some panels where you bring various leaders from industries to join in on a call with your juniors and seniors. Or you can do some college visits remotely. Can you have some young alum who are on the campus themselves? Obviously, this is geared to K-12 schools, but as you're thinking about how you can engage your alumni in a more personal way with the students, talk with your faculty, talk with your staff. What are they struggling with? What are the projects that they had coming up that could be replaced through remote partnership with your team or with your alumni base? Same with parents. This is all new with parents as well. So maybe they're seeking a parent community group. If it's young students at home, young children, they're going to be needing and looking for support on how they can educate their kids remotely, how they can communicate with teachers, how they can provide entertainment that's also educational and maybe not just screen time. So developing community online is doable. You can segment it by different groups. You can also bring everyone together, and there are various tools to do so. One, as I mentioned, was that Facebook Live event that PDS, Princeton Day School, does. They also use our platform Wavelengths to find people by geography, by careers, and all of that. So Wavelength offers the ability for your users to find each other and network that way and connect with their peers. There's LinkedIn. There's so many platforms. It's finding the one that's right for you. Remote reunions has been a question that came up a lot when people were signing up and registering for this event. Clearly, there's a lot of live events and reunions planned that are having to be postponed or changed. So what can a remote reunion look like? At this time, people are seeking comfort in the community and connections. So it is doable to do online reunions. In this visual, this is our Wavelength platform. We are creating a way that you as an administrator can segment and search for people on class years or various groups like sports organizations. Whatever data you do have, you or a volunteer would be able to create a virtual reunion, schedule it, and it would be an email directly into the email inbox of your alumni or constituents, and it would be a calendar invite for them to join in. As you think of your day-to-day reunions that you have live, there are a lot of people who pre-event like to gather with some of their good classmates or teammates and say, hey, let's grab a beer before heading over to the party. And there's a way that you can actually promote those small gatherings remotely as well. On our platform, we are creating the ability that as an alum, you would be able to search for people, their peers, their class years, what have you, click into their profile and actually invite them and schedule them to join a video chat. This is one way to continue to have people engage together with the school as well as with each other. What I encourage you all to do as you think about reunions, as you think about the community, is to do an exercise with your team. And if you are a team of one, I would encourage you using some of your key business partners to come in and engage with you. But ask your question this: what is the purpose behind in-person reunions? What are the events you hold and why? What are you communicating about? When are you communicating it? And what level of engagement are you asking of each of your constituents, whether that's faculty and staff, parents, alumni, and current students? As you start thinking through all of the reasons and activities you have through these reunions, what you should do is prioritize the top messages and experiences that you want to get across no matter what. What do you still want your alumni to experience from afar? And as you do that, then consider what platforms do you have today and what platforms exist out there that could deliver on this vision. And it might be a combination of a few different things. And it will, you will have to look at what other platforms maybe some of your other teams are using across your school. But the value of this is there is still hope. There are reunions are possible. As you can see, Zoom happy hours and Zoom gatherings are just bubbling up left and right. And I keep using Zoom because obviously that's the platform we use, but there are a lot of other ones too, Google Hangouts and otherwise, that people are using because everyone wants to connect. So after you've done the exercise of asking why and what you do and really honing in on all of the details, prioritize your events, prioritize what exactly you want to get across, consider how that can be answered on your platforms, and then mobilize and celebrate as a community. Because bottom line, what people are seeking is connection, and that's what you can deliver on today. So we have just covered a lot in a very quick amount of time to allow us to have questions. What we started off with was the understanding that the future is unknown. Things are changing every single day. Leading a remote team is doable. It's different. It requires change management. It requires effort, additional communication, double and rechecking everything between tasks and projects to just check-ins with each other. Your customers want to hear from you. They also need you to adjust your tone and outreach to be able to do it in the right language to address what is happening today. And lastly, remote communities have been around for some time, but if you foster and develop your school communities, it can be more strengthened than ever before. We are here for questions, and I do see that a few came through throughout the session, so let me look at them today, right now. How do you design a compelling virtual ask so that constituents view the entire ask as it's easy to click out? In terms of storytelling, do you make an ask early on or the virtual ask? Holman, do you want to take do you want to answer that one? It's just about how do you ask in a compelling way, understanding that too long of a story might have people click out before actually taking that action.
Yeah, I would say that it's in this time, just even looking at what MCI did, definitely don't want to ever give the impression that like you're kind of leading constituents on and then like asking at the very end, like definitely the surprise of it being an ask might even rub people even worse than in other times. So I think that's where kind of going into the transparency and really leaning into why is this ask being made, like why does it tie into the events of now. I mean, I think it's also hard to lean in to make the ask in the very beginning either without any context. So I'd say that once the context is there, and again, you can take a look at the presentation afterwards and you'll see the way that MCI did it. They go into the beginning, they explain the story, but then it is a day of giving, so it is very clear that there is an ask being made, but then also right within that ask, letting people opt out as soon as possible, or letting there be alternative forms of participation, like sending a message to classmates or offering help to classmates.
Excellent. Thank you, Holman. Another question we got was about having some outstanding pledges for a capital campaign, and how do you approach that with the fiscal year ending in June? I have heard this question a fair amount across some other webinars and conversations I've had with various schools. And Holman, I'll let you jump in on this after I quickly just make an anecdote. They have made a commitment to your school, and that relationship is an important one. Being able to reach out to them and speak to them first as the check-in of how are you doing, and getting a read on really where their mindset and emotional level is, to then be able to, in a very polite way, approach them and asking whether or not it's still reasonable to, that their outstanding pledge might still be fulfilled. Holman, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we take a similar mindset towards it. Again, I think these are tough times, so like highlighting that in the beginning. But as Katie said, like these are people that support your school, and even in the tough times, like people want to support the things that they love. The way that we usually approach these things is to let there be outs. So if like to make sure to bring it up, but like bring it up earlier rather than later. So that way, it's possible that the donor will push back and be like, hey, like I know it's like really important for this and this, but I just really can't do it. But like maybe can I get like another few months? So at that point, at least the donor still knows that this is a topic that it's topic of mind, but they know that there's a way that they can still support you without it being like hitting a certain deadline. So I think just providing that out, approaching it normally, or not normally, but approaching it with empathy in the beginning, and then being flexible once the conversation starts is our suggestion.
Excellent. Another question that just came in had to do with asks around the emergency fund which exists versus a general donation, and whether you should be focusing intently on just the emergency fund, both, or overall donations at large. Do you, Holman, do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, so I would say that, yeah, this is definitely a tough question. I think this is why we've seen a lot of, probably the most common type of ask we've seen in this time has been the emergency fund, but of course those are restricted gifts, whereas the annual fund gifts, like that's probably more top of mind for the advancement team at least. So I would definitely, I think that's a strategy that each school will have to approach. If the emergency fund is being helpful right now, then I probably wouldn't do both at the same time. I think the message gets diluted there. Then it just sounds like multiple asks are being made, but keep it focused and then change the time frame based on like where the funds needs to be allocated. So like if the emergency fund only runs for the next month or so, then like internally your team can start planning like how are we going to think about making the annual fund ask, and probably to space those out too, so it doesn't just seem like one after the other.
That's a great call out, Holman. I think bottom line, again, it goes to really the message that you're sending out and the call to action. Being able to have the opt-out at any time, being understanding that if people can't give, that's all right. The messaging is dependent on your priorities and what your needs are. So if the emergency fund is going well, and that is the message and the way people can rally behind, proceeding with just that one rather than diluting between two makes sense. But it is also dependent on the conversations you have with leadership in understanding that if the emergency fund is being boosted at this time, resetting expectations of what overall giving for the other pot might have to change. And so having that conversation as a team, making that informed decision with leadership so they have a new expectation will be important. One question that we had around engaging with alumni was how can you engage with them and have them participate and be active through these online communities? If you look online at places like Facebook and LinkedIn, there's a lot of attention-grabbing distractions between different community groups. Trying to have a joint thing to rally behind, whether that's celebrating the faculty and what they're completing, or trying to have some sort of interactive piece and a call to action for your alumni to participate in, whether it's you have this little live concert for just your alumni, or it's asking them to share some of their skill sets that could help promote current learning today. You want to think of meaningful actions that they would want to contribute to so that they are engaged, feel like they're contributing, and also receiving something back in return and being acknowledged. We had a comment here about solicitation annual versus emergency also depends upon constituents you are addressing. That's very true, Jody. It is important to think through who you are targeting, whether they are major gifts, major donors, as well as friends and family of the school versus young alumni. Your messaging should be targeted by the constituent base. We had another question here. I need to connect with volunteers to get their time commitment for next year's annual fund. Is now the right time or should I wait? I think communicating with your volunteers right now is valuable. However, it is also understanding that a lot is unknown in the coming year, and some of these volunteers might not know what their job situation is like. So I would do it as a very small ask of first approaching them saying, how are they doing? We are still having to move on and think of the future. We know a lot is unknown, but what are your thoughts on your commitment? And I think that's perfectly appropriate as long as you are understanding and acknowledge that things might change and you'd be open to those changes as long as you just keep an open line of communication. Excellent. It looks, if you have any other questions, we have time for one or two more. At the end of this webinar, we will send out a recording as well as the slides. Zoom is experiencing a delay on delivering some of the recordings, so it might come in the next 2 days or so. But we will definitely share out all of these resources and the links that we referenced. We appreciate your time. One thing that I would like to call out as we talk about community, I know a lot of you all were seeking answers from how peer institutions were doing activities and how you all are handling it. You are actually invited to our platform to be able to search for each other and connect with each other. You can search by similar school structures, location, all of that, so that you can really understand and connect with your peers. When you click out of this Zoom link, you will be prompted to put an email address in if you are interested in joining our platform. At any point, you have our email addresses as well if you have additional questions, want to learn more about our products, and we're always looking for more content to talk through in upcoming webinars. So if there are other themes or questions you want us to answer, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're in this together as we seek out answers and figure out how to make these changes and work remotely from an advancement perspective. Thank you so much for your time, and good luck with all of your respective school initiatives.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.